Well, we're joined now by the man who described Hillary Clinton as a political zombie who could only be stopped by a silver bullet or a stake through the heart. Journalist, author and commentator Christopher Hitchens is in our Washington studio. Christopher Hitchens, thanks for being there.
Nice of you to have me.
It's a pleasure. Now, mixed monster metaphors aside, were you surprised that Hillary Clinton was not only beaten, but has now conceded her defeat?
No, I've thought Obama had the math, as we say here, for some time. It's been very obvious, in fact, that he had a delegate lead, and as long as they were counting delegates, which is how the party actually does work, he was going to win. I was not as flabbergasted as most people were last Tuesday night when he achieved the total needed for the nomination, and in her speech she didn't concede. She didn't even recognize the fact, she didn't even acknowledge the fact, she didn't even praise him for it. Acted as if she was in complete denial, lived up to my billing of her, in other words. But by Saturday, that had become completely unsustainable. And she bowed as gracefully as she could. I didn't think all that graciously, actually, to the inevitable. And as I think you just pointed out, has, in a sense, not called off or abandoned or wound up or wound down her campaign, but put it on hold.
There's been some interesting analysis over the last few days on what actually went wrong in the Clinton camp. Festering hatreds, open bickering, bad advice, and above all, hubris.
Yes, and a very, very incautious, imprudent, foolish attitude to the smaller states, the more marginal ones, where the Obama people were very, very early on able to identify an absolutely crucial opening for themselves.
Now, Governor Bill Richardson, a former Clintonista, told the New York Times what hurt them most was their sense of entitlement,
yes. The
belief the presidency was theirs.
That's right. Mrs. Clinton sounded like Joan of Arc hearing voices when she was interviewed early in the campaign. I forget to whom she said it now, but she said, "I will be the nominee. I shall be the nominee. There is no question but that I will be the..." In the first place, people don't like to be talked to like that. And in the second, well, it is tempting fate.
In the last days of her campaign...
And the other thing is the X factor. Nobody really knew about this for sure, but again, I personally think my own hunch was correct. It was thought that the great campaigner himself, the great political secret weapon, Bill Clinton, would make the clinching difference. And of course, he probably did. If there was any one single thing that lost to the nomination, it was the unbelievably crass and vulgar and almost thuggish behaviour of her husband at almost every stop.
That's particularly ironic, Christopher. That's particularly ironic when you consider that that what has now emerged from the Clinton campaign as being the main reason they believe they were defeated is sexism.
Yes, that's a good point. That's, of course, another unattractive, self-pitying aspect of it, as if Mrs. Clinton's gender was the only thing people had against her. It's about the only thing that people who don't like her, like me, don't mind about her. So it's silly of her to do that, just as it's silly of her to say in New Hampshire, "Oh, silly me, here I am crying, you know, poor little Hillary," when in fact she's usually as tough as a nail.
We know what your personal opinion is, but put that aside for a moment. Is there any chance at all that Barack Obama will choose her to be his running mate in this campaign?
I think almost certainly not. It's not because I think it would be a terrible idea. I can't think of any way that's good for him, though. If he does this, he never has another moment's peace, really, for the rest of his political life, win or lose. On the campaign, she'd never be off the phone. She'd always be looming up and over his shoulder. She'd always be upstaging him. People would be always making invidious comparisons. It would continue to matter to the campaign what Bill Clinton did. Is he going to lose his temper again today? Is he going to turn red and make some crass or nasty remark, which is, as he's been doing all year? That would count against us this time. He'd be part of it. What about all the people who voted deliberately not to have her? They deserve to be respected too. The whole definition of change in this context was no more Clintons owning the Democratic Party. It would negate the whole point of the campaign. No, I mean, obviously you can tell from this that I hope he doesn't, but I think those are very cogent reasons why he shouldn't and won't.
Let's look closer then at the candidate the Democrats have finally chosen. You've been very tough on Barack Obama too, but you've also said that he's developed as a candidate in front of our eyes. in the campaign and has a core of seriousness. Do you think he'll continue to grow during the campaign, during the coming presidential campaign?
Yeah, it's my impression that that's what he's in the process of doing. Yeah, it hasn't just been a matter of the campaign either. I think since he became a senator, there's sort of qualitative and quantitative differences in him, and almost all of them are for the better. I thought that the way that only really about a week ago he finally made up his mind about this absurd church of his was bad, and I actually thought that the reason he gave for doing it was the wrong reason too. But he has done what he ought to have done.
He's a compelling orator, no one would doubt that. At his core is this unwavering message about change, but without a great deal of detail. You've been studying these candidates. What changes do you think a President Obama would be able to make on the United States?
Not as many as he promises. I mean, not at the current rate of promises, I mean to say. Last week, he said that people would look back on this moment, the moment when he got the nomination, as the moment when the oceans stopped rising. That's asking rather a lot, I think, don't you? It reminds me of the story of King Canute. Though Canute used to say to his courtiers, don't act to me as if I could hold back the tides. Obama is saying, just look at me, you can picture me having an effect on the tides. I think that's hubris, if you like. I know what he means, and it's a nice image, too. But these are all hostages to fortune, because those are going to be the standards by which he's measured later on. And if you start off in that way with a lot of brave new frontier talk and huge promises of that kind, then come your midterm, you're going to be held to account for it, if not sooner.
Well, on that particular promise of stopping the oceans, it's obviously about global warming. And the question is, could he be the president, the leader that reverses America's dependence on oil and coal?
Well, as you know, treaties like Kyoto have to be endorsed by the United States Senate. And so, given that the Kyoto Treaty got, I remember exactly how many votes it got in the Senate, because it was none. It's a very easy number to remember. I don't think it's really in Obama's gift. I think the great disappointment of American politics is simply this. Presidential rhetoric has to be about uplift, as people like Senator Kennedy understood instinctively. It has to be about grand subjects and the American dream and so forth. As I think Mario Cuomo, who was quite some rhetorician himself, said at one point, you have to speak rhetorically in poetry, then you have to govern in prose. That's the great difficulty of politics. We'll find out what Senator Obama's like on the prosaic, which is what really counts. The
rest of the poetry is interesting, though. Educational opportunities for all, no one left behind, a healthcare system that works for everyone, good jobs for the jobless, etc., etc. Does he have a chance with a recession now looking like it could extend over a number of years in the United States? Does he have a chance of doing any of those things?
No better for the rhetoric, at any rate. And I would also point out that if you'd just read me that shopping list and not told me who it was who'd said it, that I wouldn't have been necessarily able to guess that that wasn't McCain or Mrs. Clinton. Everybody promises universal health care. It goes back at least as far as Woodrow Wilson. The nearest we ever got to it, oddly enough, was under Richard Nixon. Presidents don't make that decision either, you see. That's all decided in Congress also. So what we really are asking, it's not too early to ask this, is this going to be a Democratic or Republican year? My impression is the Republican Party itself, never mind its presidential nominee, is in fantastically bad shape and can expect to take a big hit in the House and in the Senate in the fall. And that's really what will determine what the limitations of the presidency will be or won't.
And if he does have a favourable Senate, a favourable Congress, he still has the factions within his own party to deal with.
Surely he does, yes. But he will have a great deal of goodwill, to put it no more highly than that, if he's the Democrat who gets his party back into the White House and into the control of Congress. He'll be in a position to dictate a lot of terms if he can claim to have done that for his people.
He once spoke candidly about the weird intersection in some parts of America between guns and religion. Will that come back to haunt him, or could indeed he be the one to convince Americans to change their gun culture?
Oh no, he won't be the one to do that, and I would predict he won't try very hard, if at all. I'm pretty sure I do know, I'm glad you asked me this, because I'm pretty sure I do know what the Republican strategy is going to be between now and November. They're going to represent him not as someone of mixed race or any of the other things that have been so much ballyhoo, but as a member of a very elite and effete and rather snobbish academic minority in the country. They're going to appeal to American populism. And the crucial text, which was actually handed to them by Sidney Blumenthal of Mrs. Clinton's campaign, he's the one who found it, is a speech in San Francisco on, you got to understand these rednecks, you know, they're resentful, they're insecure, they cling to their churches, they like their gun licenses and so forth. Unbelievably patronizing attitude towards the heartland. I think that's what he's going to have to live down, and he'll be hearing a lot more of that kind of talk from McCain and McCain's surrogates.
The evidence is that he'll probably change his rhetoric too, at least his rhetoric in private, as that particular comment was recorded privately, as I understand it. He's opposed publicly to gay marriage. His wife, Michelle, says you have to take baby steps or you'll quickly lose public support.
Yes, she's from a very pragmatic background as well. I mean, her father was a precinct captain in the Mayor Daley machine in Chicago. She's a very solid machine Democrat. He's from this district of Chicago called Hyde Park, which is really the bit around the university. Historically, very sort of, I don't know, food fads, very green, very sort of Starbucks, pretty left-wing in American terms, and yeah, well, academic. That's what he's going to be attacked for, I think. It'll be a bit more like the attack on someone like Dukakis was. And I don't think he's not in a position now to start doing things like John Kerry did and putting on earmuffs and going out duck hunting. I mean, he would look so stupid if he tried that I think he can't, and the fact that he can't will show.
Okay, let's look at the other side of the political ledger now. Both Obama and John McCain, as you pointed out, made big speeches last Tuesday. Obama's was widely praised. John McCain's speech, however, was seen, and many Republicans, smart Republicans, saw it as evidence his campaign is faltering already. What did you think?
Yes, there was a very strong attack on it just this morning, actually, by William Crystal, the neoconservative intellectual who's the editor of the Weekly Standard, saying that it was just abysmally done. It was a small rally, badly staged, puke green lighting, as he put it, and mistakenly angled at not very clever attacks on Obama himself, at just the moment when even quite a lot of Republicans would have been prepared to say, well, listen, let's step aside for one moment and acknowledge the fact that the Democrats have picked rather a fine chap. So the whole tone of it was just desperately off. And of course what the Conservatives have to hope is that this can be made into a national security election, and it'll be the credentials of the Commander-in-Chief that are being considered most saliently, and that's an auction that only McCain can really win. It
does. I mean, the fake smiles, the badly staged speech, the bad speech in itself, it all raises issues about McCain as to whether we've we've overestimated him, in fact.
Well, I think the more people see him, the more certainly I hear people making sort of worried remarks about his appearance. He doesn't look very good. It's not that he looks ill. It's not that he looks senile either, but he looks, I would say, elderly. I hate to say it, but not old or a veteran. That's good in a senator. So, you know, the white mane and the craggy visage. That's all fine. But he doesn't look like that. He looks off colour somehow, and that's going to tell over time, especially with someone as youthful and fit looking and as handsome as Senator Obama.
There is this other fact, that's the bottom-up campaign that seems to be changing the way campaigning is actually done in the United States. Obama's people have proven to be masters of this viral internet campaign and internet fundraising to the detriment of the others who are way behind on this. Is that going to be a decisive factor in the end, that they are ahead of the game generationally in terms of technology and communications?
Well, it's been, yes, there's that too, but actually it's been the case for quite a while now that the Democrats are able to get more money from the wealthy in America than the Republicans are. from the famous zip codes that denote wealth. The Democrats are now the ruling party. The Republicans are more the party of the medium rich and the middle class, but the Democrats have the super rich in their corner. It's an interesting change over the last 2 years. It's one of the changes that Clinton made.
And what about this bottom-up campaigning notion that Obama's people seem to have mastered compared to the way the Republicans go about their traditional campaigning? Will that be a telling factor?
Yes, it's bound to be. Yeah, well, it already is. But the old habit of getting, you know, a lot of fairly well-off people to write very large cheques won't die in the Republican Party, and it's not that bad a way of raising money, as a matter of fact.
Well, Christopher Hitchens, there's much more to talk about. We haven't even tapped into the very rich vein of religion. We'll have to do that next time we speak to you, no doubt.
Absolutely.
But we will have to leave you there. We've run out of time, sadly.
Oh, dear.
We'll come back to you another time, and we'll talk about what's happening on other fronts in this campaign as it proceeds.
Please do. I'd love to do that.
It'd be a great pleasure. Thank you.